One of the things that makes me particularly excited to be here today and to moderate is that it was actually my volunteer experiences in student leadership in my undergrad that actually led to my master's and the last 16 years of my career. So this is a topic that is really near and dear to my heart. But what I'd like to do as a start off point is I'd like to toss it over to our four guests, so Kurt, Molly, Alice, and David. And I just wanted to start by having each of you introduce yourself, the organization that you're representing today, and just a little bit about the nature of the organization's work. So going in alphabetical order, Alice, if you don't mind, we'll start with you.
That's the benefits of having an A name. I always get to go first. So my name is Alice. I'm the founder of a website called Volley, VOLLY. It's a volunteer built and volunteer run website concierge service, basically to help people like you find volunteer opportunities. And so I started it because I graduated from grad school, came back to Calgary, had a hard time looking for volunteer opportunities, and decided that with the popularity of apps like Tinder and stuff at the time, we wanted to create something that was equally easy to use and easy to capture people's attention. So we created our website. It is mobile responsive. We don't have an app yet. And we kind of put a pause on the app just because people like to volunteer, but not so much that they want to download an app for it on their phone. And so that's one organization that I'm representing today. Another one is the Calgary Community Fridge, which you may have heard of. It's a volunteer run outdoor fridge and pantry program located in Crescent Heights. So that project has been happening since August. It's been very successful, and our goal is to solve food scarcity in our community of Crescent Heights. Obviously, because of the demand of food scarcity in Calgary, we are now helping people from all corners of the city, but we're hoping that we are able to encourage other neighborhoods to start their own fridges to help keep demand at a sustainable rate. So if you have any questions about either of these initiatives, please feel free to ask. Thanks.
Thanks, Alice, and welcome. And we'll throw things over to David.
Hi, well, I am an undergraduate career development specialist at Career Services. I help pretty much all students, but I focus mainly on undergraduate students, and I help them with anything career related. Like a lot of students think Career Services just helps with resumes and stuff, but we also help students kind of figure out their passions and what they're interested in and help them launch their careers. I've been working at the university for much too long, 14 plus years. And really what got me into the university was volunteering. I volunteered at Career Services a long time ago. So I'm a big believer in volunteering. And I help students not just with career jobs, but I'll help students help them practice and volunteer. So if a student wants to be a vet, I'll help them get a volunteer gig at a vet clinic, or help them get part-time jobs as well. Because I'm a big believer in whatever you do want to do for your career. I think it's very important to test it out, and volunteering is the best way to do that. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, David. That's an awesome piece of advice. And fun fact, everyone, about David, he has the most impressive knowledge of movies and music of anyone that I've ever met.
Wow. Thanks,
and let's go to Kurt next.
Thanks, Gareth. So I'm here representing the Calgary Climate Hub today. And so the Climate Hub is it is an advocacy-based volunteer organization. We are focused on trying to move the needle in climate change at the city level. So we don't deal in provincial or federal issues. We are looking at things like green buildings, better infrastructure, fair transportation, as well as a number of other initiatives that can definitely support our climate resiliency plan at the city. So I'm happy to go into more detail during the breakouts and such, but in addition to that, I'm also a representative of organize an event in the city called TEDxYYC, and it's one of Canada's largest independently organized TED events. And I'm happy to be here and chat with you all.
Thanks, Kurt. Great to have you. And last but not least, Molly.
Awesome. Thanks, Gareth. Hi, folks. So my name is Molly. I am the volunteer coordinator at CJSW. My pronouns are she and her. Yeah, I'm just here to chat a little bit about CJSW. If you aren't familiar with it, it is the campus radio station. You can catch us on 90.9 FM 24/7. We run over 110 programs, and it is one of Calgary's only independent media outlets. So CJSW highlights both music programmers and spoken word programmers that you probably wouldn't hear in mainstream outlets, highlighting lots of alternative and underground media, music, art, businesses, local collectives. And has like a great history. The society was founded in, I believe it was 1958, and we've been on the FM dial since 1985. So lots of great history, lots of fantastic volunteering opportunities that I'm excited to chat a bit about with you today.
Wonderful, Molly. Thank you. So as we go into the panel, essentially the way this is going to work are we kind of have 4 banks of the opportunity to ask questions. The first theme that we have a couple of questions that relate to our career choice and employability skills, which is such a key topic to be discussing when we're talking about volunteer work. So, and maybe let's go in reverse this time. So we will start with Molly on this question, but how did or is your volunteer experience as a student? How has it influenced your career choice, and how did that lead to your current role?
Yeah, I'm just thinking. So for folks to know a little bit about me, I am graduating from the U of C with a Bachelor of Arts, not a Master of Arts, maybe one day, a Bachelor of Arts with a major in English. And I'm also a graduate of the Arts Co-op program, which is fantastic. So I can speak a little bit about my experience as a volunteer as an undergraduate student, and also my experience going through the co-op program and getting 12 months of work experience. So I think the first thing I like to chat about is I made the time in my second year after chatting with a coordinator in arts, being like, I want to get into the co-op program. What should I do? And she was like, volunteer, find something that you really love. So at the time in my second year, I wanted to poke a little bit around humanitarian-based clubs on campus. So I got involved with the Red Cross Club on campus, and I want to give them a pretty big shout out. I believe they are still very active, as kind of my first sort of foray into volunteering at the University of Calgary. And then from there, I volunteered actually with the Arts Co-op program. I did digital media with them, and I also helped curate their newsletter at the time. And I really attribute both of those to getting my co-op, which was in the Faculty of Science, working as an office assistant and later on a student engagement assistant. I know I'm talking pretty fast. I was in my undergrad for about 5.5 years. So I really am a huge proponent of taking your time and finding what you really like and not trying to rush through the 4-year degree. If that works for you, that's good. But I think it's really valuable to poke around on campus. And I know that obviously right now, given COVID, it's not the reality, but being able to attend panels, being able to attend seminars, being able to just chat with your friends and seeing what they're involved with is, I think, a really great starting point for folks who are in their first and second year. Yeah, and then after I finished my co-op at the Faculty of Science, I was involved mainly with, I would continue to work part-time with the Faculty of Science, and I actually worked with student engagement and curating a lot of volunteering opportunities for Faculty of Science students. So I had this really interesting path from being an undergrad student, seeking out volunteering opportunities, to working my way into volunteer management, which is kind of funny, but I'm really lucky that I think I just went looking around in my first couple of years and sought out the resources that the university had, whether it was the Faculty of Arts or Career Services or the LSE, was, I think, really beneficial to where I am now. I hope that answered the question, Gareth. I know I kind of rambled, but I made my way back.
No, not at all. That was great. You know, I love the point that you made about taking your time. I think there's often a pressure that students feel to get their degree done in a certain amount of time. And one of the things that I always recommend is that students should take the time that they need so that when they cross the stage, or at the moment, sort of the virtual space for graduation, they can do so saying, I've done everything that I wanted to here and I don't have regrets. So thank you for that. Let's go over to Kurt.
Thanks. Yeah, so my first 2 years of undergrad was actually at the University of Calgary, and a split actually between Mount Royal and University of Calgary. The first volunteer organization I got involved with was ISEC. It's a Student International Internship Program, AIESEC, and that gave me kind of a love for traveling. So I did complete my undergrad at Carleton in the political science degrees, but it was volunteering with ISEC that really gave me leadership skills, business skills, and marketing skills that I could honestly contribute to where I am today. A lot of the stuff that I've done over the past, I can't even count how many years now, but has been really volunteer driven. And it wasn't until this summer when I applied for the volunteer coordinator position at the Calgary Climate Hub that I realized that was the kind of the prevailing trend of the last more than a decade is working with, helping to start up voluntary based organizations. And so it became a kind of a great connection to work with the Climate Hub, to build up their momentum. So in university, I got to speak with owners of business, multinationals. I got to connect with and go on to conferences all around the world. And all those opportunities were available to me through university, and the university supported me, as much as they could with, funding for conferences and stuff like that. So, the university is a great support system for individuals that are looking to expand. And so I 100% suggest or contribute my volunteer experience with where I am today.
Great, thank you, Kurt. As a follow-up question, you mentioned there about building your leadership skills. So I'm curious, if I were to ask you the question, how would you describe your general sort of leadership philosophy? What might you say?
My general leadership philosophy? That's a great question. I think leaders, there's lots of different types of leaders. Leaders that kind of lead from the front, lead from the back, and I think the important part is that everyone has that potential to be a leader, and that it's just the styles that are variable, right? I think one of the core things that I strive for constantly is to empower people to take leads on things, right? If I kind of make all the decisions, that's not fun for anybody else, right? So I want to make sure that people are empowered to learn, to fail, and to learn from those mistakes and grow and become better, because that's exactly what happened to me.
Awesome, thanks. That's a super inspiring answer. David, over to you.
Well, I guess with me, like looking way back when I was like a kid, I guess I got from my parents, right? My parents were volunteering. My parents volunteered with the community association. And my parents kind of had a motto, kind of give back, help other people. And I think really, if you look at Canada, I mean, volunteering is important to make Canada, right? So when I went to university, and I'm from Ontario, so I went to a small university called Trent University. And I remember in first year, I went to, it was a seminar, and it was done by the theater company at Trent University. And they said, we can give you money to put on your plays. And I couldn't believe that. And I was like, whoa, because I have a play now, could I put it on? And they were like, yes. And so I was like, wow. So I put on a play, my first play I ever wrote, called Dark Side of the Moon. And I put it on at university. And then the next year I was like, you know what? I want to get involved and help more students put on plays and stuff like that. So I started volunteering with the Theatre Trent group at the university. And then of course at the university, a good plug for the radio station, I was like, I want to have a radio show, right? And so I went into their little radio station they had at Trent University, and I was like, can I have a radio show? And they were like, sure. And so I had 2 radio shows by the end of my university. And really, when I look back on my university, I look back on the time I spent as the radio DJ and the stuff I did with Theatre Trent and the volunteering. So I'm a big believer in volunteering and treating it with the same respect as you would a paid experience. So that's kind of my history. And then more recently, I did volunteer with the public library for 9 years as a career coach every Thursday evening, going to the library and helping people find jobs with resumes and stuff. And then I stopped doing that. And now I'm into a volunteering opportunity that I'm not too happy about, but I'm a member of my condo board now in my apartment, and that's volunteering, but it's not my favorite volunteering. But I'm going to do my term and do the best I can, because I guess I get that from my parents: give back, help other people. And I think everybody should volunteer. That's sort of my thinking.
Thanks, David. I love that you brought up the point about treating volunteer positions like a job, and that's actually something that we're going to come back to in the next question. And Alice.
Yeah, so I'm like a self-professed obsessed with volunteering. I've been doing it since I was a kid, similar to David. My parents volunteered at their local church and their community. So that was something like, giving back in kind of the traditional charity sense was something that we did as a family all the time. It wasn't until high school that I started venturing out and doing volunteering with more mainstream organizations. The Calgary Public Library was one of my first volunteer initiatives, and I did volunteering reading club with immigrant children. And it was really through that experience that I really saw the impact that volunteering can have on families in Calgary, especially newcomers. And being a child of refugees myself, I just really I was so impressed with how great the volunteers were that I was learning from, but also how impactful the families felt this program was for their kids, especially when they didn't speak English and they couldn't afford tutoring. Like, these volunteers were there to help the kids increase their reading skills and just socialization skills. Like, if you're growing up as an immigrant, like, a lot of the times you're at home by yourself, the TV watches you. That's basically our babysitter, right? And so from that alone, I continued to volunteer with immigrant serving agencies. So I went to U of A, I did a degree in economics and East Asian studies, and continued to do homework club in Edmonton for a center for newcomers. I eventually went to grad school in France and then moved to New York. And in New York, they had an organization called New York Cares, which is basically spontaneous volunteering for the busy New Yorker. So basically, you didn't have to do an application form for each organization that you volunteered for, but rather you would do one vetting process, have your police check, all that stuff, and then every day you can kind of look at the events listed and you can just show up and volunteer. So it could be everything from bagging groceries to handing out hampers, to changing light bulbs, to homework, to driving people, whatever it was. It just made it a lot easier. And so when I moved back to Calgary in 2014, I was looking for something similarly simple. And we had just come out of the flood at that point, and living abroad and kind of watching the volunteer efforts of the Calgary community, I was so inspired, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to move back to Calgary. Like, this is like my time. Like, I love volunteering, and now everyone's doing it. So I went back, and a lot of people had settled down from volunteering at that stage. Like, Calgarians are great. Like, I think we volunteer more than any other city in Canada. I don't know if there's like an official stat, but I really believe it, because a lot of people I know do volunteer. But many people, when it came to finding that weekly or monthly commitment, had a hard time finding a cause that really spoke to them. We have over 1,400 nonprofits in Calgary. The number's growing every day. There's an increased amount of mutual aid initiatives as well. So not charity status, not technical nonprofit status, but just neighbors helping neighbors. And so I wanted to create a platform that would make it easy for people to look for these organizations. And so I pitched my idea at an event called Civic Tech. It's a hackathon for basically people with tech skills to build websites and apps and whatever tech solutions for free, as long as it benefited the community. And so I had a group of volunteer programmers who had never volunteered before build this website. And so we are now 3 years old, and we've helped over 2,000 people volunteering that we know of, like not even the people who are just like checking out the website. And it's been super amazing, because you have one person who has never volunteered or has to do it for school begrudgingly, but being able to actually link them with a cause that identifies with their passion or their the impact that they want to make in the community, it just created these long-term super loyal volunteers for these organizations. So I've gained a ton of skills. I got my job because of volunteering. My boss saw me speaking on behalf of the Chinatown community at a public hearing at the city of Calgary, and was just like, hey, I want to hire somebody that is super community minded. And I was able to get the job and working there for 4 years. It's been really great. So I could talk about this forever, so I'll stop there. But yeah, it's made such a positive impact on my life and so many other people that I know, in addition to all the people who are on the receiving end of volunteer help, that I just think everybody should do it as much as possible.
Thanks, Alice. I love that you mentioned about matching people's volunteer interest to their passions. One of the things that we talk so much with students about is choosing volunteer work that is meaningful, things that allow them to use their skills and their talents, but something that they are really invested in, and talking about. Often we see sometimes students will overcommit, and then we talk a lot about the quality of volunteer work as opposed to quantity.
Absolutely.
So in this next question, and each of you have touched on this, is that one of the large topics at the moment in the space of volunteering is how students or anyone that's volunteering can really talk about, because of their role, the employability skills they've been building. And so this next question really relates to that, and it's what are the specific employability skills that your organizations help your volunteers build? And how would you say that your organization supports the development of your volunteers? David, I'm going to start with you on this one, and then after that, just choose who you want to pass it to next.
Okay, well, I don't really, like I don't really understand, like, because the question, like I know like volunteering is like it's real work. I mean, just because you're not getting paid doesn't mean that it's not real work. And I think like the skills you learn, like I remember when I volunteered at Career Services, I was pretty much doing the same job that I do now, but I was volunteering. So I think like the skills I was developing are communication skills, leadership skills, problem solving skills, right? Like I think those are the skills that we were developing. And whenever we have volunteers at Career Services, we always want to try and make sure that we understand what they want to gain from the volunteering experience, and then support them as best we can. But I don't know, am I answering the question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And
let's over to Molly at CJSW. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started as the volunteer coordinator here about 3 months ago. And because of how quiet things have been about COVID, I've been really lucky to be able to chat with a ton of staff members and programmers about the history of the station and how they really see volunteers driving the station. So for those of you who don't know, there are only 7 full-time staff members at CJSW. Literally everything else is volunteer powered. So if you tune in at like 2 a.m., that is a volunteer programmer. If you hear an ad, there's a good chance that ad was written by a student volunteer and it was voiced by another volunteer. So I'll kind of break my answer into 2 parts. So the first part, as Gareth mentioned, what are some volunteering opportunities that you see kind of develop skills that would be useful in other areas of your life, and especially employability. And then the second part, how we provide support for that at CJSW on our end. Yeah, so I think a lot of people show up being like, I want a radio show, and which is great. If you do want to do that, like we can absolutely provide the support to help you move along and get that one day. But I think a lot of people immediately go to the tech side of things, like, oh, I'll learn how to edit sound, I'll learn how to work Logic, I'll learn how to use a bunch of different editing software, I will learn how to, kind of do the tech in the booth stuff, which is all very, very true. And I know that a lot of the other programmers could probably speak to a little bit better than me, but what I've seen are hugely marketable skills that I think people don't really realize they're developing is writing is a huge one, public speaking, being able to hone, like when you're voicing something, being able to hone that and really work on that, which is like hugely beneficial, whether it's from job interviews to being in your job, and just also in classes. Like it's nice to be able, when you speak, feel a little more confident with your voice and what you're saying. So I think some of those really ground level skills working at CJSW gives you. And also I think an ability to meet folks from like so many different walks of life and learning how to build connections in so many different ways, which is something I think we downplay a lot as students. It's like you don't really realize that, but learning how to build connections and like relationships, whether it's in a volunteer setting or a workplace, are hugely important. It's like an ongoing learning process. So those are a couple of the skills, from very technical things, working at a radio station, you'll absolutely learn all of that, to some of the more quote unquote softer skills, what people might call it, but that interpersonal relationship, and I'd say like public speaking and writing are really important ones that you learn volunteering at CJSW, and really kind of, I think, any media-based job. And yeah, how we provide support for that at CJSW, we run a lot of workshops. Right now they are all virtual, obviously, but we're running like anywhere from kind of 1 to 3 workshops monthly, whether that's a writing workshop, whether it's an editing workshop, whether it's like teaching you how to write an ad or a script or something like that. So we provide support on our end, teaching you, like it's all free. It's not like you have to pay. Like CGSW, you can, you know, send us an email, you can volunteer, and like it's like a lot of the stuff you would learn, you have to probably pay lots of money or get a job working at a radio station. That's what I'm realizing is really cool. And then I think just even the nature of the history of the station, a lot of programmers are really willing to talk to you, chat with you, provide support, answer any questions, which I don't see very often at tons of, like in my old like work experience or volunteering on campus. You don't see that robust history and people who are so willing to chat and reach out and tell you like anything that you need to know. So from like, you know, the staff side of things, we provide a lot of support, but just the community of the station provides a lot of support in its own way. Even during COVID, whether it's a phone call, an email, or a Zoom chat, people are always willing to talk. So yeah, I hope that answered the question. That's kind of from my end of things, how at CGSW, there's a lot of stuff going on and we're ready to help everyone out.
Great, thank you. Alice, let's jump over to you.
Sure. I've always been a huge proponent of volunteering during university, but also especially after you graduate. We've seen a lot of nonprofits sometimes have a lot of interest from high school and university students, and then as soon as they get their jobs, they stop volunteering. And then when it comes time to finding a new job or wanting to switch industries, the people struggle to kind of stand out from their counterparts because they don't have that diverse experience that volunteering can give you. I also know that volunteering is a great way to learn skills that you didn't get to study. So for instance, since I did my grad school in business and I did undergrad in economics, that there were a lot of skills in terms of like marketing or sorry, not marketing, but like graphic design, web design, photography, event planning, things that I didn't really learn in school or have practice with, that I got to hone and grow through volunteering. I agree completely with what was said regarding learning skills like leadership skills, communication skills, having a huge chance to just get comfortable and used to speaking to strangers, get used to and comfortable being essentially a salesman, right, for the organization that you volunteer for, and showing that passion for a cause and being able to articulate the importance and the benefits of the organization to strangers. Like that's a skill that's applicable in whatever job or whatever you do, right? One day, maybe you'll want to start a business and you have to pitch your idea to a bank or to even your family. Like you have to be able to convince people of the values. And that's a huge skill you learn through volunteering, because you're essentially trying to get people to do stuff for free a lot of the times. Something else that I think is really important is a lot of parents that I talk to will say, oh, my son's been working as an accountant, or he's been working as a writer in this company forever and they're not promoting him, or do you think volunteering can help? And honestly, in the society that we live in, it's, you know, people who have better communication skills are often the ones who will get chosen for, you know, leadership opportunities, just because they're outgoing. Like that's basically it, or they're more comfortable with communication. And so for a lot of parents, what we always say to them is like, if you want your kid to be well-rounded or to have the skills that will lead into leadership positions or promotions in the future, like you have to encourage them to not just keep their nose in the books, but also to volunteer and communicate with others and outside of their comfort zone as much as possible, and to prioritize as much as academic excellence, because being able to communicate your skill set and what values you bring is just as important as having it all in your head. And so if you want to build great leadership and you want to be a boss one day, or you want to be a VP or whatever it is, definitely getting out and talking, or having the opportunities to talk as much as possible, will help you in that regard. I also have a lot of people who are looking to pivot careers. And so one way to kind of learn the skills again is through volunteering, and usually training is involved. And what's great about volunteering to learn new skills that you don't really have the education for is that there is a lot of mentorship and a lot of support, and it's a lot, there's room to grow and room to learn. And as long as you're very transparent and open about what your skill set level, but what you're willing to put in to learn it, the organization's always happy to help you. And so for the past few summers, what Volley has done is kind of done this job shadowing kind of program, like basically matching university students with skill sets in careers that they would like to go into with organizations that can help them build and grow that skill. And so far, we have a pretty high success rate of these people actually being hired on after volunteering, which is interesting, right? Because once you get in the door of the organization, people get to know you, they know your personality, and they see the type of worker that you are. And really it is about seeing people with a good work ethic and willingness to learn and creativity and being a good team player, and having great communication skills. And so it's a great way to help grow your career that way as well. So yeah, I hope that answers. I don't know. I always feel like I could talk forever about it. So Kurt is next.
Thanks, Alice. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to repeat. I think my co-panelists are brilliantly put so many aspects here. There's a few things I'd like to just highlight. Volunteering, at least for me in my experience, has been really about doing stuff that you wouldn't normally get to do until further in your career, right? And so when you're at that entry-level position, you're not privy to strategic conversations and stuff like that. So so joining a volunteer organization within a few months, a year, you're planning strategies over what what kind of activities you're going to do for that year, and you're building teamwork skills, those communication skills and leadership skills, that you can then apply later on in your life, and then that advancement will ultimately happen. I applied after university. I applied for a job at the Aga Khan University, and it required a master's degree. I didn't have a master's degree, but I had experience in developing a program for a volunteer program through ISIC. And so because of that volunteer experience, I got the job. I got that 1-year position over master's students. So that's just another example of how volunteerism can really, really propel forward. And the last thing I think I'll share is do something that's gonna challenge you, that's gonna get out of your comfort zone, so that you can learn something. Again, it's the safest place for you to fail, for try new things, fail, learn from it, and have a supportive community around you to help build you up.
Thanks, Kurt. I really appreciate all of your answers, and I love how everything that you brought into the conversation just builds on one another. And that would be a really good jumping point into another question I have in mind, but I'm going to hold off on that for a minute. Ryan, do we have any questions that have come in chat?
We have one question to Alice from the Volley app. You mentioned being involved with the immigrant services and working with immigrants. Is that program still available or still exists?
Yeah, there's actually quite a few. So since I volunteered for that, that was over 10 years ago, there's been quite a few immigrant serving agencies that have popped up. And so what we can help you do is kind of figure out the demographic of immigrants that you would like to help, whether it's youth, children, women, seniors, that kind of thing, and link you with the ones that could use your skill set. And obviously make sure that it works for your time and their time as well. So yeah, lots of opportunities like that.
All right. To our participants that are watching, are there any questions at all that you have at the moment? Again, you can either feel free to turn on your audio and ask or type those in the chat. Right, and maybe just while folks are thinking, I will, Christina, I see that you have your hand up.
So for the climate change thing, so what are the actual like things that the volunteers are doing like to take action on climate change?
Specifically, what volunteers are doing to take action on climate change? Was that the question?
Yeah.
Great question. Yes. With the Climate Hub, one of the things that we're really focused on doing is helping people learn how to talk to counselors, right, and how to engage with municipal politics and understand sort of how policy affects things happening at the city level. We also run a number of conversations around climate, so kind of neighborhood programming that allows people to kind of get to know your neighbors and get an understanding of kind of where people are at. What can we do in our community to make an impact on the climate? Whether that's looking at building solar panels on the community center, or setting up a community garden. It's very neighborhood and very community specific. So those are some of the things that we do. We've got a campaign right now. We're trying to encourage NMAX to set a net zero target. A lot of other companies are doing. A lot of other electricity companies are doing it, and so we've got a petition out and had over 300 signatures, which is great. We also partner with a number of organizations. So there's the youth organization that we partner with is Fridays for the Future, and they do a lot of work advocating, in front of City Hall and stuff. It's obviously because of COVID, that's kind of stopped. But you know what? It's such a brilliant group of students that I've met that are so well informed about the issues, and they're really passionate about making a difference.
So like Fridays for the Future, is that high school students or?
High school and university students, yeah.
So like, is that like the sort of like Greta Thunberg in Sweden, where like the high school students, they like skip school on Friday to do climate action?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what. So Fridays for the Future, I believe, was started by Greta Thunberg. So it's along those lines. So they are their own entity. The Climate Hub supports them every now and then, but because we don't do a lot of that direct action, we don't organize protests and stuff like that. We work with decision makers to try to advance policy and educate the community.
Thanks, Christina.
So that petition for NMAX, is that on change.org, or like where is it?
It's on our website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. We appreciate the question, and thanks, Kurt. So I know that when we break out into our breakout rooms, there'll be more opportunities to ask questions. Another one I wanted to come back to, and this is around resume, but it's in a different way. So when we talk about volunteering, I think it's important to acknowledge it both. It's an exceptionally important thing, but for some of our students, they don't have the privilege or the opportunity to volunteer, either because maybe they're working full time, they're raising a child. There are different components where, they just don't have the opportunity to have the same ability to volunteer. And so with this in mind, I wanted to ask each of you, how would you recommend that students convey work, school, or other experiences on a resume for jobs or programs that put extra emphasis on volunteering?
Should I go? I can.
Sure, please.
Yeah, sure. I do get this question a lot, like where people ask, I'm already over inundated. My schedule doesn't allow for volunteering. Like, how do I find a job, or how do I set myself apart or be competitive in the job market because of this? And a lot of the times, like what we like to do is kind of help, like we like to kind of interview the students ourselves in a way to kind of draw out the things that a lot of people don't think is volunteering, but is, or is that don't think is a skill set that should be on the resume, that is. Because, you know, there's a lot of stuff that we do in our daily lives. Like my parents, if you were to ask them, have you ever volunteered? They will say no, because they don't think that the stuff that they do with their friends and their family and their communities counts as volunteering, because it's just something like they don't really have like a word for it. And in Chinese, like doing volunteering is very much like the, you know, the definition is like, oh, world vision. I'm like out there, you know, handing out hampers or something, but they don't think about a lot of the community building and social justice things that they do in their daily lives. And so I think really thinking more about what experience you have and plotting that into volunteering, even if it's not with an official organization, it, you know, it still counts as volunteering experience. And so trying to draw that out a little bit. And then obviously there's a lot of ways to support remotely as well, or online. Especially now during COVID, that's really opened up a lot of creative ways for organizations to use volunteers that isn't them having them in person. So yeah, I'm happy to chat about that further as well.
Thank you.
I also wanted to kind of add a little bit, because I think like it's, you have to put your best application forth. Like, so I think if you don't have the chance to volunteer, then because you're too busy at school or you have other things, that's okay. It's not like we're saying you have to volunteer or you're doomed. I think you have to kind of find the time so you can volunteer. And if you do volunteer, then speak highly about your volunteering experience. But also too, like university students, they do a lot of really cool things in class too, and group projects. And we really like students to bring that up forth on their resume and promote that as well, and promote the skills that they're developing. So I think that's kind of how you kind of promote it. But I always think like if like a company's like asking for a certain amount of volunteering and you don't have it, then maybe to address that in a real positive way in your cover letter, and let them know that you want to give back and you do want to help. Yeah. So.
I could chime in for quickly on this question too. Volunteer experience is relevant experience. In fact, on my resume, I list it as under leadership experience. I don't even put volunteer experience. And I list all the organizations that I volunteered with, you know, because at the end of the day, like if you managed, you know, 8 volunteers, right, that's relevant experience. If you organize an event for 100 or 1,000 people, whether or not you get paid for it or you volunteered, that's relevant experience. And, you know, if you wrote a press release, right, you know, that's all very relevant experience that's applicable to the jobs or to voluntary organizations.
Yeah, and I'll just I guess go with the end because everyone said stuff. Yeah, everyone's made really good points, so I won't reiterate like everything what people have said, but from my personal experience, so in my first years of my undergrad, I was working like 20 to 30 hours a week in addition to 5 classes every semester. And burnout is so real, and it is very difficult to find time. And I remember feeling like I was never going to get a co-op. If I did volunteer, it was going to be something really low level, and I was never going to be like the president of a club or an exec or anything like that. So I think, like for me, it was, if you are a student, like using the resources and talking to folks about being like,
آدم نمیشی؟ حتما باید پیپی کنم رود اینجوری پیپی اسفالی از سرت.
We love Zoom, don't we? But yeah, like chatting with folks on campus, and also I think finding, if you are worried about burnout and you do want to volunteer, for me, I found like the lowest commitment thing, and not like, because I think that, and not in a way where I was like, oh, I'm gonna just do this like as a low tier thing, as something that would like, I could build from that. And I know for a lot of folks, that's not a reality if you have a family, if you're supporting a child. But for me, I was like, I'm going to start with something very like small, very low commitment, but just commit to that as much as I can. And it kind of like empowered me to like take on a little bit more and build up. And as I said, I know that's not a reality for everybody, but for a lot of students who are in similar positions working part-time in school, is just don't discredit the very small amount that you do. It will really empower you, and it will help you build up, as long as you are very committed to the small things that you're doing, and it'll reflect in lots of different ways that have already been iterated by my co-panelists. So that's what I'll say to that.
Great. Thank you to each of you for those responses. Those are some really awesome pieces of advice. So I want to be mindful of time. We're at about 12 minutes to 2, and I want to give folks enough time for maybe a quick bio break in between. So as our closing question for this part, I'm just going to ask to each of you, what has been your favorite volunteer commitment that you've had?
I can
Well,
go again. Oh, okay, David.
Okay. I saw it. I was unmuted first. I saw it. No, my favorite volunteer story, one of my favorite career story was I was a career coach at the public library, and I was helping this old lady, and she helped her with her resume, type her resume, and print out some copies for her. And she gave me a big kiss on my cheek. And here I am in the public library, and I got this big lipstick thing on my cheek, and she hugged me and thanked me. And so that was just, I was just like, you don't do that unless you get out there and volunteer and give back. And that was a real career highlight for me.
For me, I think our most recent endeavor with the Calgary Community Fridge is definitely a top item for me, because during the pandemic, so many families have been struggling so hard, and to be able to create a mutual aid initiative like the Calgary Community Fridge and have all these different stakeholders come together and support it, including landlords, the City of Calgary, Alberta Health Services, and then all the hundreds of donors who bring food every day to the fridge, has been so great, because it's just like a really microscopic way to see the impact that we can have on our communities if we all kind of work together. And so the people that we get to meet at the fridge, who not only are so grateful for this fridge to be around because it helps them with their bills and like food and everything, being able to give them the opportunity to give back to is super important. And that's what mutual aid is kind of all about, right? Is to that we're all helping each other. There's no like hierarchy, there's no gatekeeping, like it's all just about neighbors helping neighbors in whatever way possible. So being able to empower the individuals who utilize the fridge to also take care of it and give back to it is so meaningful and impactful, and I think is one of the keys to why it's been sustainable to this point. Like it's literally a fridge that's outside without security, without cameras 24/7, and we have never had an issue. So yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, I think, yeah, it's always like when everyone unmutes at the same time. Yeah, I think my most memorable, I think volunteering experience was something that wasn't actually based out of the U of C. It was based out of more like community arts. And I was, before COVID, I was lucky enough to just like do the front table and collect ticket sales at a couple all ages drag shows at drag brunches in the city. And it was really cool. I got to meet a ton of really cool families, really cool kids doing cool art. I'm really interested in kind of like drag and like queer art in the city. So for me, it was like a really awesome experience. I got to meet a lot of cool people. So yeah, like not something I put on my resume, but it's something that was really memorable. And it was like, I had a blast. So just, you know, if you have friends who are in arts or other scenes like that, just reach out to them and be like, hey, do you need a hand? And to you, that seems like you're being like a friend, but it's totally volunteer experience. And it was so much fun the handful of times I did it. So that was my most memorable experience.
Oh, great. Amazing. Yeah, I think there's so many. I think one story I have is volunteering with TEDxYYC during our event a couple of years ago. I had the speaker, Simon Jamal, who talked about, you know, Calgary's response to the refugee crisis that happened a few years ago. And she talked about how she started this, you know, Syrian support group that helped bring Syrians and kind of acclimatize them and provide community for them when they arrived. After she gave that talk, you know, she just broke down in tears because, you know, there was a voice that hadn't been heard before, you know, and it's a great Calgary story that isn't told enough. And so, and the most impactful thing was like shortly after I had this conversation with this lady who's from rural Saskatchewan, has a ranch and has oil rigs and stuff, and you know, and I asked her what was her favorite talk, and she said it was Simon's. And she says, you know, next time anyone has anything to say about these refugees, you know, I've got a few words for them now, right? And that's the power of ideas, and the fact that like over 40 volunteers came together and put that event on and made that connection happen is why I continue to do what I do. So thank you.
Thanks, folks. All right, if I can invite everyone to use the reaction tab in Zoom, whether it's applause or thumbs up or hearts for all of our amazing panelists today. And while we are doing that, Ryan, if I can turn things back over to yourself for where we go from here.
Yes, thank you, Gareth, for the wonderful panel, and thank you for all the panelists. I know that there are organizations here today that aren't participating in the panel. So I'd like to give each of one an opportunity to really introduce themselves. I'm being cognizant of the time. Can you share your mission statement with the people in attendance? I think we'll go in alphabetical order. Is there a rep from Between Friends that could speak to the mission statement? Nikki or?
Yes, sorry, I am here. Hi, my name is Nikki Stevens. I'm the program coordinator at Between Friends. Between Friends provides social and recreational programs for people with disabilities. We offer year-round as well as camp opportunities. Due to COVID, we've moved to online, so we have launched a virtual program, and it's called We Connect. And we also have special events that we're always looking for volunteers for. And we're in the middle of working towards a relaunch of in-person programming, which will happen later this year too.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki. Buds and Bloom. Do we have a rep from Buds and Bloom? Michelle?
Ryan, thank you so very much for welcoming me here today and for coordinating this. Nikki, we're going to want to connect. So Buds and Bloom, in short, is co-creating a world for all children and families. And it's specifically to foster connections with already existing resources such as Nikki's. So we're here based in Calgary, but we originated in Quebec. So this is kind of a new opportunity here for anybody interested in something maybe a little bit smaller to begin and potentially to grow with the organization.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle. From the Calgary Catholic Immigration Society, Adriana. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Hi, it's a pleasure being here with you today. So yes, CCIS, the Calgary Catholic Immigration Society, we're a non-for-profit organization which helps in terms of settlement and integration for newcomers. So basically we provide settlement and integration services. We have over about 100 programs to help immigrants and refugees in Southern Alberta. We're the largest non-for-profit organization in Alberta, and we have been working for newcomers since 1981, and we have been a leader in the community. We have a solid experience designing and delivering comprehensive services to assist all these newcomers. And we deliver this through many services. Overall, our organization speaks collectively 60 different languages, and our mission is to work with the community, and through our partnerships, we empower immigrants and refugees to successfully settle and integrate in Canada. And our vision is to have a society with where immigrants and refugees can reach their full potential. And we do this, like I said, through many programs that we have in place. We have programs for youth, we have programs for children, we have a new project that is called Land of Dreams, which is a farm, and we have bees, and we're trying to bring our Francophone community to get involved in these activities, and also the children to also help us grow fruits and vegetables to feed newcomers. We also have a lot of services that are tailored to serve our professional newcomers. So we collaborate with different communities and with the business community across the city to enable them to connect with potential job opportunities. So there are a lot of collaboration opportunities. There are a lot of volunteering opportunities. We have translation services as well. So we have a seniors program. So we have a lot of opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. From the Calgary Corporate Challenge, do we have somebody from them?
Yes, hello, I'm from Calgary Corporate Challenge. Yeah, is this just like a quick?
So just like, what's your mission statement?
Our mission is to bring, I'm so sorry. I get so uncomfortable doing these. It's like professionally managed team building events to build corporate culture, promote corporate philanthropy, things like that. So we do one big thing in September called the September Games. And typically they're about 21 in-person events that we do over the course of 16 days. We like to call it like the Calgary Olympics pretty much. And we have over 160 companies every year participate with us, and there's a leaderboard and there's the charity challenge and lots of different aspects there. So because we're running so many events, we usually have lots of event coordinators with us and like registration, scorekeepers, things like that. And this year we're developing a lot of virtual events, and it's a new landscape. We did a bit of it last year, but we would love to hear new sorts of things that we can do to bring people together and just boost company morale and bring a little like life back into the city.
Awesome. Thank you. Do we have anybody from the Calgary Public Library? Connie?
Hi, everyone. My name's Connie Smith. I'm the Volunteer Resources Specialist at the Calgary Public Library. As you can see our lovely library behind me today on my background screen. Our mission statement at the library is to empower community by connecting you to ideas and experiences, inspiration, and insight. As with most other organizations in Calgary right now, we've seen a lot of challenges for our volunteer program over the past year. We have moved a number of our volunteer opportunities online, and that's kind of what I'm here today to talk about mostly, is some of our online virtual volunteering opportunities that we have to offer. And we have been able to keep a couple of our opportunities active that are in person as well. Most notably our Homebound Reader program, where we have volunteers that are matched one-on-one with people who aren't able to leave their homes for various reasons, and they deliver library materials to them and act as a contact point in the real world for them as well. They end up developing friendships and keeping in touch. It was a very important program for us through COVID, because it was our one volunteer program that was able to continue operating through the entirety of COVID. In the early days, it was more just calling them on the phone and checking in and providing some of our Homebound Reader with resource lists so that they knew how to get the resources that they needed during COVID, whether that was grocery delivery or masks. But now we're back to them being able to do contactless delivery to our homes. And we have a number of other volunteer programs. If you're interested in tech, we have a great online tech mentor program. We have an ELL conversation circle program for newcomers as well, where we have volunteer facilitators, book discussion groups, and other things. So if anyone's interested in the potential of volunteering with the Calgary Public Library, please do come and see me.
Awesome, thank you. From the Distress Center?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ryan, for putting this together. It is my pleasure to be joining today. I'm Fitora, and I'm from Distress Center. Distress Center, I am a volunteer recruitment coordinator working with Distress Center for 6 years. What is happening at the Distress Center? During the COVID, Distress Center was popular in every way in the community. we can say that we were very busy during this time. The Stress Center is a nonprofit organization where we are based in Calgary, and we do have our mission vision that I would like to just to share with you all. So we do provide compassionate, accessible crisis support. Our vision is everyone is heard. We value accessibility, collaboration, compassion, excellence, inclusivity, respect, and volunteerism. So what do? We offer people to volunteer as a crisis volunteer on the lines, offering them first a training, which is very thorough training, so they will be ready to volunteer on the lines. Before, we used to have all our volunteers in the contact center at the distress center in Calgary downtown, but now most of them are working remotely at home. So the training is all online, a recruitment process as well. And then it's their choice if they want to go in the contact center, because the contact center is open for now, but with limited capacity. Most of people and volunteers are working from home. Distress center accept volunteers. So we do have a crisis volunteer position and connect team volunteer positions as well, which is 15 and up to 20. And crisis volunteer, there is no age, like from 20 up to 70 or 75 or 80 people can volunteer. What Distress Center has something else that I wanted to share with you. It's a 211 information and referral as well. We do have SOARCE. So what is SOARCE? SOARCE is our coordinated access and assessment program. Serves Calgarians who are experiencing homelessness out of the safe communities. Why to volunteer at the distress center? So you will gain skills that you are going to use in your daily life and with your friends, and so it's a very, very rewarding work. This is what we are getting back from our volunteers. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome, thank you. And do we have one from the Jewish Family Service Calgary?
Hi everyone, my name is Samantha. I'm a social worker at JFSC, or Jewish Family Service Calgary. We're a social service agency in the south of Calgary. We offer a range of support for individuals across the lifespan. Include support for caregivers of persons with dementia, older adults needing mental health or addiction support, counseling for survivors of domestic violence in the Jewish community. And our volunteer programs really function as an extension of the work we can do as staff. Some examples I can give: in our memory care program, we have our volunteers visit with a person with a memory loss or a diagnosis of a dementia like Alzheimer's disease, and they deliver meaningful brain boosting activities. We also have food hamper support, so providing groceries to seniors in their home who are facing food insecurity and may not have the mobility capabilities to go out to the grocery store right now. Also friendly visitor to connect with the senior by phone every week, and yeah, be happy to explore these further with you in our breakout groups. Thanks for having us.
Do we have somebody from the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Support Center?
Yes, thank you. So my name is Danielle Kalewski, and I'm the co-founder of the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Support Center. Our mission is to support families that have experienced the loss of an infant or a pregnancy. We're specifically looking for volunteers to help us in our social media and our marketing area. We have recently launched a helpline as well as some virtual support groups, and we're looking for volunteers to help us develop this, work with our marketing coordinator to develop the streams and to be able to provide education for both yourselves and education for our community on what loss looks like. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Bridget from Rainforest, can you give us a quick 15 or 20-second pitch? Sorry about.
Sure, no problem. Yep, my name is Bridget Legault from Rainforest, Alberta. We are a movement that helps to support the culture of trust in the innovation and technology sector in our province, specifically in Calgary though. And there are many ways you can get involved with ourselves and other partner organizations in the tech sector. and that is a culture back to the community.
Awesome. Thank you. And the University of Calgary Students Union.
Hi, everybody. I'm the manager of student services at the Students Union. My name is Nikat. I'm currently overseeing our volunteer services office. We run 10 different programs on campus for students to volunteer with. All of them are service-based for the community on campus, which makes them really unique. So one of our key programs is our campus food bank that's currently still running. We do curbside deliveries for that program. We're also offering our Q Center drop-in and support services online currently. So we have a few volunteers that we take for that as well. I'm hoping to have more programs up and running for the fall semester. We will be trying to launch our tax program, which offers free tax services to students. And usually that's one of our biggest programs that we offer with over 100 volunteers. And then hopefully we will also be restarting our student literacy program, which matches mentors and learners who are looking for help with English as a second language. So yeah, we offer a whole bunch of different programs and hoping to have a bunch of them restart in the fall, and we'll be updating our website as those things start up again.
Awesome, thank you. And Women's Center of Calgary.
I think
Hello.
that might be, oh.
Hi. Hi, I'm Carol. So I'm from the Women's Center of Calgary. I'm the organizational development lead there. So the Women's Center is a community space. Our mission is to be every woman's place for support, connections, and community. And our vision is women supporting communities and communities supporting women. So we're a women-only space. And we basically work around providing direct support to women, and I would say ongoing support, so from referrals to peer support, active listening, but also community connections, and that looks a little bit different these days with COVID, of course. So nurturing community connections, making sure everything is accessible, so all our services are free, and we also work towards broader systemic change. So we have an area of work focusing on social policy, advocacy work, anti-racism, reconciliation. So it's I would say a combination of those three areas, and we're volunteer run. So we had about 800 volunteers pre-COVID times. That changed a little bit during COVID, but still a large base of volunteers. We still offer in-person and online services. So that's one of the changes due to the pandemic. So we're kind of offering both. So there are opportunities to volunteer in person, but also remotely. And that's across all three areas of work. So we be providing peer support to women, but it will also be supporting our food program by picking up food. It could also be working in the community around reconciliation. So there are many, many opportunities. It really varies depending on the volunteers' schedule as well, the work that they would like to do. So it's really diverse, and it's also at the basis of all we do, and whether that's women or volunteers or staff, it's really that community building that we're trying to recreate. So it's really a nice atmosphere, I would say. There's lots of support, lots of training as well. And it's also a good opportunity for volunteers who would like to have a better sense of what social services are about. That's really a good segue into that, and also support in terms of employment, for example. So yes, I think that's kind of the short version for the Women's Center of Calgary.
Thank you for everybody for introducing themselves. Did I miss the Calgary Seniors Resource Society, or did we get?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to go. Yeah. Hi, my name is Robin. I'm the volunteer intake assistant at the Calgary Seniors Resource Society. So our goal is to keep seniors, living independently and feeling like they're valued members of society. So a lot of our seniors, have low income or don't have family supports in the city. So our volunteers offer things like social supports, which, before COVID would involve going into their homes and spending time with them, or doing grocery drop-off, pet assist, driving them to the bank, driving them to the doctor. So a lot of our programs are super flexible, which is great for students, obviously. Like, you can pick and choose what time you want to volunteer, what day works best for you. And, you know, if one week you normally do a Saturday, but that doesn't work, it's totally fine. That's more than okay. Right now, we're working on a vaccination transportation program, which, as you can imagine, involves taking seniors from their homes to get their vaccination and back again. We really, really want volunteers for that program. Like, we have a lot of seniors who don't drive and don't have family and can't afford to take taxis. So we're super eager to have anybody sign up who is interested, even if you can only do just a handful of drives. So thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I think we're going to open up the breakout room sessions, and I ask that if all the employers, if they haven't been renamed, to stay here, and we'll rename you to represent your organization, and then we'll put you in the breakout rooms. Thank you, everybody.
Sorry, I just joined as well the Calgary Food Bank. I couldn't find the code for that thing, so I'm here. So just
go for it. Give a
sorry,
give a quick
thank you, Ryan. So my name is Shirley Rosen, and I'm one of the Calgary Food Bank volunteer coordinator. Just wanted to let you know that we are actually still open, still running. You know, we just changed our volunteer program. It looks a little bit different due to COVID-19. We do have, again, the same roles, a variety of roles. We have the warehouse roles, we have the call center, baby room distribution, ID checkers, just to help our clients. Again, volunteers are limited to 1 shift per week in the same area and an ongoing basis, right? We've changed the process just to keep our volunteer safe during the COVID. And then again, the food bank has changed to a drive-through model now. Volunteers are allowed in the building. However, clients are not allowed in the building, just to make sure that we have our volunteers safe as well. So thank you for having us
awesome.
With here today.
Thank you. We are going to open up the breakout rooms now, and feel free to drop in throughout the day and to have more conversations with these organizations. I want to thank again Gareth, David, Molly, Alice, and Kurt from participating in this panel discussion this afternoon, and we look forward to learning more about each and every one of your opportunities to participate.